Hello everybody, Razorblade Mango here, and this is my first video in what feels like a long time, even though it's only been a few weeks. So, to explain the lack of videos, I recently started school again, combined that with my full-time job, and I've been pretty just dealing with some personal stuff, just not to get into too much detail, but recently I've kind of just lost a lot of creative spark, I guess, over these past few weeks. Like, there's been stories that I could have made videos about, but I don't know, I just haven't really been feeling it lately. And I kind of am like, well, I feel like I've been lost in a fog recently, and I guess I don't know what that I can contribute that towards. Just a combination of just being back in school and just having like an overwhelming feeling about that. So it is, it is what it is. But I had to make a video about this. What I would not be Razorblade Mango if I did not talk about the PlayStation 4 Pro and its conference. I at least need to do a video about that. So, my first initial reactions to this conference was just pretty meh. Like meh. Like even now, even then, I did not think the conference was good. I thought it was very just dry and dull, and they talk so boring. Like, you had Andrew House and Mark Cerny coming out and just sounding so unenthusiastic, and like they just had their hands in their pockets the whole time, just like, oh well, yeah, this is the Pro, this is what it does, here's some gameplay, goodbye. That's basically what the conference was. And I'm not even really going to talk about the PS4 Slim, because we've known about that for weeks, and I'm not all that impressed by what I've seen with the PS4 Slim. I feel like it's missing some stuff, and the design of it just looks strange, but not as strange as the PS4 Pro, which that's the Neo. The Neo is now the PS4 Pro, and it looks like the PS4 Slim, except like a triple-decker hamburger version of it. It just looks so, I don't know if I go so far as to say ugly. It doesn't look very inspired. Like the PS4 has, a slick design. The original PS4 has a very slick design. It looks, people made fun of it for looking like an eraser, but it's nice. It has a very minimalistic, simplistic design. But this fucking thing looks like just overly encumbered, and it just doesn't have the sleekness that the PS4 original design does. And I'm not usually one to harp on what a console looks like. Definitely not. I care much more about what it can actually do, but in this case, I was a little just underwhelmed by what the PS4 Pro looked like, I guess, from a visual design. For they've been like hyping this thing up. We've known about this thing's existence since like June during E3, or April even. I think either like April, May, June, or were when we first learned about the Neo and its specs. And pretty much everything we learned about it has been confirmed at this point. It's gonna be coming out November 10th, which is fine. Coming out during the holiday season, which was accurately predicted that it would come out before the year's end. It's going to be priced, this is what surprised me the most, it's going to be priced at $400, which is what the original PS4 costs at launch. And that is actually really good. That's a better than I expected price point. I expected this thing to be like $500, $550, the way they were talking about it, like it was some big revelation. But it's well priced. I mean, if you don't own a PS4 at this point, you might as well pick up the Pro. Like, there's no point whatsoever in picking up the original PS4 if you don't have a PS4 already. Now, that being said, I have to wonder who this console was made for. Like, why does it exist at this stage in time? And I know the answer is, oh, well, it can support 4K gaming and stuff like that, but I'm kind of like, is there really a desire, like a large desire for 4K gaming? I know that it feels like this conference, this product is just made for people that have 4K TVs, and everyone else just felt like an afterthought. And it was strange, just the way they were marketing it, the way they were talking about it. Like I said, it felt like they knew Project Scorpio was coming out, and I know they've talked about how, well, the Project Scorpio is not our concern. I don't buy that whatsoever. I think that they knew Project Scorpio was going to come out, and they knew it was going to be 6 teraflops or whatever the hell it is, and they were like, oh fuck, well, can't do it now. Now we have to release it. Now we've had all the things leading up to it. We might as well just put it out there and whatever. That's what this conference felt like. It just felt like whatever. We'll just throw it out there. People buy it, great. If they don't, whatever. So my biggest question after this conference ended, and they barely touched upon this, is what are the benefits of this thing if you don't own a 4K TV or don't really care that much about 4K gaming? Like, what is there for me? And I guess the answer is the games will run somewhat better, I guess. That's the big thing. Now, we don't know. Another problem I had with this conference is how wishy-washy and how poorly the messaging was come across. Like a bunch of people said this on Twitter, and it's very accurate, that this conference did not feel like modern PlayStation. It didn't feel like, clear, effective communication, right to the nitty-gritty, the stuff that we want to know. This felt like old school Sony, where we don't know what the fuck we're doing, so we're just gonna stand around and talk out of our asses with our hands in our pockets and just go, oh, alright, whatever. It just, the lack of any solid details, the fact that they were being so wishy-washy with their wording and vague, and lots of buzzwords like transform. Like, if I had $1 for every time they said unique or transformative during this conference, I'd be a fucking rich man. I could probably retire right now, because I feel like they said those words so much. They said transformative, experiential, cinematic, unique, and I'm like, really? Like, you guys didn't learn anything from your last E3 conference, which I think is one of the very best I've ever seen, where they just shut up and let the games speak for themselves? Like, all this talk feels like such a step back after what I hoped they got the point during E3, where they're like, hey, let's just let the games talk. Let's just let them, let's show the games. Don't talk about the hardware. Don't do on and on and on about how, this, especially since a lot of people could watch this conference in 4K. So seeing this in 1080p, you don't really get the same feel as you would watching it in a 4K environment. You don't. So it was a very hard sell to do this from a conference standpoint, which brings me to my next point. Why did they even bother doing this conference? Why did they even bother having this live streamed and have a bunch of journalists when the air was just so dead and you had like such little enthusiasm and like there was like little clapping in the background? It was bizarre. It was a bizarre thing to do, and it was only 45 minutes. And it's like, if your conference for this thing is going to be 45 minutes, don't have it be this thing where you have it live streamed and you have journalists sit down. Just do a direct. Just pull a Nintendo Direct and have that be your conference. If there was any point Sony should borrow from Nintendo, this is it. Like, this should have just been something that was put out there, live streamed a Sony Direct or something, and just talk about it for like 45 minutes, and boom, you're done. You don't need to go on and on and on about how, oh well, we're gonna have this be so good, and here's our specs, and here's what the TV's gonna look like on the PS4 Pro, and it's like come on. And the games they showed off, I said this on my Facebook page. I said, like, something that Sony absolutely has to do in order to sell people on the Pro is show how their exclusives are going to look like on the PS4. We need extensive gameplay, new extensive gameplay of stuff. And in that regard, with the games, they really dropped the ball on that, in my opinion. Yes, there was some cool stuff. You had an odd place to introduce the first gameplay footage of Mass Effect Andromeda, which looks fine, looks good. I'm not entirely, I'm not entirely interested in it yet, even though the footage looked fine. They showed more of Horizon Zero Dawn, which at this point, I'd rather they just not show anything of this game anymore and just go dark for a while until like the final few weeks until launch. I'm not like tired of seeing it, but I'm more or less like, guys, you just release the fucking game already. Just do that. Just stop and do more stuff with Horizon Zero Dawn closer to launch. And that being said as well, they showed off Days Gone, which nothing substantial. They just showed how a Molotov cocktail looks on the Pro, which okay. They showed off like a minute of Spider-Man engine footage, not even gameplay. Like when Spider-Man popped up, I was like, holy fuck, are we actually gonna get the first gameplay premiere of Spider-Man? And it was like, nope, we're just gonna show Spider-Man sitting on a flagpole and how shiny his suit is and how nice all the people look in the background. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, all right. And they showed lots of Ubisoft stuff. They showed off For Honor not once but twice, which I'm still not, I guess, like really excited for it. They showed Watch Dogs 2. They like the long technical showcase was for Watch Dogs 2, which I was like, okay, okie dokie. Then they showed off more Infinite Warfare, which, I'm starting to come around to Infinite Warfare. It looks okay. Like I'm not somebody that's gonna go out and buy it day one, but I'm more or less like, it could be something. It could be cool, I guess. I know people are hating on it, but it could be something. And of course, Black Ops 3 is going to be patched in. Here's the interesting bit, that the bit that excited me the most, and then I immediately just was disappointed. They're going to get a patch. Some games are going to be patched in to support the Pro, where it's got 4K resolution, which this console is not native 4K. I don't know what the hell. I don't know why people are like, oh my god, it's gonna be 4K. No, it's not. Not even like the most high-end PCs are able to do 4K 60 frames per second at this point. It's not possible in most cases. I don't know how the hell this console that only has 4 teraflops can do native 4K. It doesn't. It's this upscaled version of 4K where they take 1080p or 1440p and then they just like stretch it out to make it look like it's 4K, which it's not. It's not true 4K. I'm sorry. It's not. And then they came out and were like, here's some games that are going to be running on Pro, which they showed off. Deus Ex Mankind Divided. They showed off Middle Earth Shadow of Mordor, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, and so on. And Infamous First Light, which, and whatever, Killing Floor 2, all that shit. But yeah, here's the thing about this conference, about this product. It sounded interesting when they were talking about it, but when more info was coming out about it after the conference ended, and we heard more about what it was actually going to do, like the nitty-gritty of it, I lost a lot of interest. One, a lot of these games. Sorry, my microphone cut out. So a lot of these games they're talking about, we're gonna make them 4K. Even the new ones, they're not gonna be 60 frames per second. And that was immediately, revealed after the conference when Mass Effect Andromeda. It was revealed like, oh yeah, it's still gonna be 30 frames on the PS4 Pro. And I'm just like, why? Then what's the point of this Pro? What's the point of having 4K resolution if it's not a quote-unquote 4K resolution, if it's not going to be 1080p, if it's not going to be 4K 60 frames? Why? There's no point in having it be 4K if it's 30 frames. That defeats the whole point. And here's another problem. They put so much emphasis on resolution during this conference. With this product, they put so much emphasis on resolution that they completely neglect how the game is actually going to run. You can have a game be beautiful, but if it runs like shit, if it keeps dropping below 30 frames, it's not going to be an enjoyable experience because you're constantly going to be like, you can have the prettiest graphics in the world, but if it runs at like 15 frames a second, you're going to be like, ugh, what the hell is this crap? So they prioritize resolution way too much over frame rate. Frame rate is more important than resolution. And I say this as somebody that's now a proud owner of a nice, very nice, powerful gaming PC. And I say this, like, I'm not, and even before I owned a PC, I've always said frame rate is more important than resolution. I've always believed that because it just is. It just is. Smoothness of gameplay, more important than resolution. I would take something that is 720p and runs at 60 frames per second over something 1080p and 30 frames. Definitely would. Absolutely. So, that being said, and a lot of these older games that are getting the patch, they're not going to be at 60 frames. Like Infamous First Light, Infamous Second Son, they're still going to be at like between 30 and 40. I think it was more 40 for Infamous Second Son and First Light. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, still going to be 30 frames from what I've heard. Rise of the Tomb Raider, now this is one of the better ones. They're going to offer and even then, it's not going to be full 4K 60 frames. They're going to offer 3 different modes with the Pro. They're going to offer, a streamlined 4K version. They're going to offer 1080p 60 frames. And they're going to offer, like a 720p 60 or whatever. It's something. They're at, like, resolution mode. And then frame rate, which it might actually be 720p or 900p 60 frames and 1080p 30 frames and then 4K 30 frames. Which, again, why is this a thing? Why is 4K reduced to 30 frames on this PS4 Pro? It's such an underwhelming product. It's just, why did they even bother doing this if they were just gonna gimp it so much? Why even bother doing this? If Microsoft's I doubt Microsoft's going to do this. I doubt Microsoft's going to come out and announce, oh yeah, all of our games are now going to support 4K 60 frames. I would be very, very surprised if that turned out to be the case. And I'd be impressed. I'd be impressed if they could actually do that. Even if it's this faux 4K, I would still be impressed. And don't get me wrong, I am still excited for Sony's games. Like, I want to make this very clear. This does not, hamper my enthusiasm towards Sony. I still, they're still my home team. Say what you will about console wars, but they're still my home team. I still have faith in them. I'm very excited for Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm still very excited for Spider-Man. Still very excited for Last Guardian, God of War, all that shit. Death Stranding. But this concerns me. This conference concerns me that they're going to start with this mentality of they're going to backtrack on the whole, like, oh, well, now we don't care about, resolution and stuff like that. They're going to make such a big deal about this whole resolution thing, and then when the Scorpio comes out, it's going to be like, oh, well, whatever. Which, speaking of Xbox, why does the Xbox One Slim have a 4K Blu-ray player and not this PS4 Pro? Why is that the case? Why is Sony making that decision for us? Because they came out and said, well, we don't believe people will buy 4K Blu-rays and they'll just and do streaming. Says who? Where's the evidence that supports that theory? Where is the evidence that gives you that holier than thou mentality of like, oh, well, we'll just make the decision for the consumer? This is the exact reason why people were pissed off that Sony did not want to get involved with EA Access on the PS4 and why the Xbox hasn't. Why that's, like, I guess, a big selling point for the Xbox. You know, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit that maybe not a lot of people will do it? Let the consumer decide. Like, you made this big deal about, you know, giving people choice. Give people choice with the consoles that they want to buy. Well, you're not really giving people choices with the fucking features. You're just kind of doing your thing like, oh, well, we're just going to assume people don't want this. Don't assume. You know what people say about assuming, right? Yeah, you look like an ass. You look like a complete ass not having a feature on this nice brand new hardware upgrade that the fucking Xbox One Slim has. Just dumb. Just dumb, boneheaded decision. And they're the ones that made Blu-ray popular. They're the ones that came out and put Blu-ray on the PS3 and had a Blu-ray player in the fucking PS3. Why is Microsoft now turning around and having the Blu-ray 4K capabilities on their console, and Sony just has their thumb up their ass and goes, oh, well, we just didn't feel like it was something consumers want. Fuck, no. Let us decide that. Don't make decisions for us. Don't do that. So, yeah, I that's my little rant about, and I personally am never going to use 4K Blu-rays, but that always bugs me when Sony does this, when any company does this, where they love to talk a good game about consumer choice, and then when it's something that a consumer actually wants, they just go, oh, well, we didn't feel like putting it in there, sorry. It's just, ugh, God. But, and then Xbox came out with this little jet, which, you know, they kind of earned that. You know, and these, like, and people are getting so pissed off about these whole, like, well, Xbox sent this tweet out that their games are better, and they're making fun of Sony, and you know what? Sony did the exact same thing with the original Xbox One, so it's only fair now that the tables are turned in this regard. I'm sorry, like, I'm a Sony fan, but I'm a PlayStation fan, but you know, these little digs at each other on Twitter, they don't mean shit. They don't mean shit. And you know what? They're kind of right. The Xbox One Slim, $300, has an Ultra HD 4K Blu-ray player in it. PlayStation, nice big new console, does not, which confuses the hell out of me. Backwards compatibility, I don't know why this couldn't have had it. They talked about how the hardware was different for the PS4, where it was physically impossible to have, you know, backwards compatibility with the PS3. That could have been a mic drop moment for them, and they just completely forgot about it. Like, oh, well, I guess we're not doing that. Okay. So, whatever. Anywho. I've gone on long enough about this. It's just, long story short, I was just not, I'm not all that impressed with the PS4 Pro, and I'm a little concerned with how they're going to market this thing from here on out, or whether their marketing is going to get any better. Sony, for the past few years, has been really confident, borderlining on cocky. And I have no problem with a publisher being confident. Like, I've loved Sony's conferences for the past 2 years because they've come out and they've been tight, concise, and they've just had this burst of life and energy to them. And here, it felt like the exact opposite. It felt more like they were just meekly coming out and going, yeah, we know this product is just not very impressive, but here are the specs, and if you want to buy it, then that's your decision. And it's just, you're not even if the product is okay, factually, this product is most likely going to be inferior to the Scorpio. You know what? In my opinion, that's hypothetically, I think that can be okay if they had added more features to this thing. If they had come out and redesigned the PS4 Pro to make it wholly different than the original PlayStation 4. Give it a new UI interface. Give it more features. Give it backwards compatibility. Just make it amp up that you're making this more powerful than the original PS4 without the usage of like a PowerPoint presentation. You're not introducing a new console. It's just a hardware upgrade from the old one. And I don't know why this presentation was so dull and so lacking. And it made me uninterested in the PS4 Pro. So, and even if it's going to be inferior, hype up the games, not just third party. Don't hype up Call of Duty. Don't hype up Infinite Warfare. Don't hype up fucking Mass Effect Andromeda. Don't hype up all these third-party games. Show us more content. Show us more gameplay from Spider-Man, Last Guardian, Horizon Zero Dawn, Days Gone, God of War, Death Stranding. Like the future is introduce new IPs. And like have your moments where you're gonna announce new partnerships. Show off the first gameplay of Crash Bandicoot or the Crash Bandicoot remake or the Final Fantasy VII remake running on PS4 Pro. Show shit like that. Don't come out and be like, oh well, here's third-party games that you can get on the Xbox Scorpio or whatever. Just this whole conference just felt like a severe misfire, a big missed opportunity for them. And that little dig about the Xbox One having, the greatest game, the Xbox One Slim having the greatest games, yeah, no. From a personal standpoint, that's extremely debatable because I have zero interest in the majority of Microsoft exclusives. And I now have a Windows 10, super powerful Windows 10 gaming PC, so yeah, I don't really need the Xbox One Slim. I have a PC for that, so yay. Anywho, thank you guys for watching. If you like what you see, subscribe. Let me know what you thought about the PlayStation 4 Pro and the conference and all that. Just so underwhelming. Just so just very disappointing and very underwhelming. So those are my thoughts on it. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one.